before Julius Caesar became the most famous Roman of his age. He was born into a republic already wounded by ambition and civil violence. His birth is traditionally placed in July of 100 BC, although the exact date remains uncertain. His full name was Gaius Julius Caesar. He belonged to the Julii, an ancient patrician family that claimed descent from Iulus, the son of the Trojan hero Aeneas, and through Aeneas from the goddess Venus. The claim gave the family sacred prestige, but the Julii were not then among the most politically dominant houses in Rome. Rome still called itself a republic. Magistrates were elected. The Senate debated policy. Citizens gathered in assemblies. Yet behind those institutions stood fierce competition among aristocratic families. Political careers depended on alliances, military victories, public generosity, wealth, and personal reputation. Caesar's family was connected to one of the most dangerous struggles of the age. His Aunt Julia was married to Gaius Marius, the celebrated general who held the consulship 7 times. Marius became the great rival of Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Their conflict brought Roman armies into Rome itself and taught an entire generation that political defeat could mean exile, confiscation, or death. Caesar was still young when his father died. Soon afterward, he was elected for the prestigious priesthood of Jupiter, known as the Flamen Gellies. He ended an earlier engagement to the wealthy Casutia and married Cornelia, the daughter of Lucius Cornelius Cinna, a leading ally of Marius. Their marriage was more than a private union. It connected Caesar to the political faction that Sulla was preparing to destroy. In 82 BCE, Sulla returned victorious and took control of Rome. His enemies were hunted. Their property was seized. Families connected to the defeated faction lived beneath suspicion. Caesar was not yet an important politician, but his marriage to Cornelia and his relationship to Marius made him dangerous in Sulla's eyes. The dictator ordered Caesar to divorce his wife. Caesar refused. It was an extraordinary act of defiance from a young man with almost no political power. Sulla stripped him of his priesthood. Cornelia's dowry was confiscated. Caesar also lost part of his inheritance. He fled Rome and moved between hiding places while suffering from illness, avoiding the men sent to find him. Relatives and influential supporters eventually appealed to Sulla for mercy. The dictator allowed Caesar to live. Ancient writers later reported that Sulla warned those protecting him that they would discover many Mariuses inside the young man. The exact words cannot be independently verified, but the story endured because later Romans believed Sulla had recognized something dangerous in Caesar. Caesar had watched the laws of the Republic bend beneath military force. He had seen marriage treated as a political crime. He had seen a victorious general decide which Romans might live and which must die. He survived not because the Republic protected him, but because powerful men persuaded a dictator to spare him. Caesar then left Rome to begin military service in Asia Minor. He had no army. He possessed little personal wealth. He held no meaningful public authority. But he had already learned a lesson that would shape the rest of his life. In the Roman Republic, power did not always belong to the law. Sometimes, the law belonged to the man with the strongest army. After escaping Sulla's vengeance, Caesar began military service in Asia Minor. He served under Marcus Minucius Thermus during the campaign against Mytilene, a city that had resisted Roman authority. During the fighting, Caesar distinguished himself and received the civic crown, one of Rome's most respected military honors. Traditionally awarded for saving the life of a Roman citizen in battle, it marked him as a young man of unusual courage. He was also sent to court of King Nicomedes for Bithynia to secure ships for the Roman commander. Caesar remained there longer than expected. His political enemies later spread rumors about an improper relationship between him and the king. The accusation followed Caesar for decades, especially when rivals wanted to humiliate him. Ancient sources repeat the story, but they do not provide reliable evidence proving it. Caesar learned another important lesson. In Rome, military courage could build a reputation, but rumor could be used as a weapon just as effectively as a sword. When Sulla died in 78 BCE, Caesar returned to Rome. The dictator's constitutional system remained, but the man who had threatened Caesar's life was gone. Caesar did not yet possess the wealth needed to dominate elections. Instead, he entered public life through the courts, where ambitious Romans could gain attention by prosecuting powerful men. He brought a case against Gnaeus Cornelius Dolabella, a former governor accused of extortion in Macedonia. Caesar lost. Dolabella had influential supporters and experienced defenders. Yet the trial introduced Caesar to the Roman public as a forceful young speaker willing to challenge a former consul. He prosecuted another provincial governor soon afterward, again without securing a conviction. The defeats did not silence him. They revealed his appetite for public conflict. Caesar understood that a Roman politician could gain fame even by losing, provided that he appeared courageous, eloquent, and impossible to ignore. Seeking to improve his oratory, he sailed toward Rhodes to study under Apollonius Molon, one of the most respected teachers of rhetoric in the Greek world. He never reached the island directly. Near Pharmacusa, Caesar's ship was captured by Cilician pirates. Piracy had become a serious danger throughout the eastern Mediterranean. Coastal communities were attacked, travelers were kidnapped, and wealthy prisoners were held for ransom. According to Plutarch, the pirates demanded 20 talents of silver. Caesar laughed. He told them they did not understand the value of the man they had captured and instructed his companions to raise 50 talents instead. He remained their prisoner for more than a month. Ancient accounts describe him behaving less like a captive than an impatient commander. He exercised, wrote speeches and poems, ordered the pirates to remain quiet when he wished to sleep, and repeatedly told them that once he was free, he would return and have them crucified. The pirates treated the threat as a joke. When the ransom arrived from nearby cities, Caesar was released. He immediately went to Miletus, gathered ships and men, and sailed back in pursuit. He found the pirates still near the island and captured most of them. The local governor was reluctant to act quickly, apparently attracted by the wealth seized with the prisoners. Caesar took control of the matter himself. The pirates were executed by crucifixion, just as he had promised. Suetonius adds that Caesar had their throats cut first, presenting it as an act that shortened their suffering, although the details of the episode come from later ancient biographies and may have been shaped to dramatize his character. The story revealed the qualities that would define Caesar's career: confidence that appeared almost theatrical, refusal to accept humiliation, speed after danger, and a cold determination to turn words into action. The young refugee once spared by Sulla had become a soldier and advocate, and a commander capable of raising his own force. Rome had not yet given Caesar great power. He was already learning how to take it. After destroying the pirates who had captured him, Caesar continued toward Rhodes. There he studied rhetoric under Apollonius Molon, refining the controlled and forceful style that would later serve him in courts, assemblies, and military councils. His studies were interrupted when war again spread through the eastern territories. Mithridates VI of Pontus was challenging Roman power in Asia Minor. Caesar held no independent military command, yet he raised a local force and drove one of the king's officers from province. Even before Rome formally entrusted him with armies, Caesar was already willing to act as though authority belonged to whoever could use it effectively. When he returned to Rome, Caesar was elected military tribune. The office was not among the highest positions of the Republic, but it gave him a place in public life. He supported efforts to restore powers that Sulla had taken from the tribunes of the plebs. He also spoke in favor of allowing political exiles connected to earlier anti-Sullan movements to return. This was not only loyalty to old allies. It placed Caesar beside citizens who remembered Sulla's dictatorship with fear and resentment. The young survivor was beginning to turn his family's persecution into political identity. Then death returned to Caesar's household. His Aunt Julia died. She had been the widow of Gaius Marius, the general whose memory Sulla's regime had attempted to erase. Caesar delivered her funeral oration in the Forum. During the procession, images of Marius appeared publicly for the first time since Sulla had declared him and his followers enemies of the state. The crowd responded with emotion. Some Romans remembered Marius as a savior who had defeated foreign armies. Others remembered the civil bloodshed carried out by his faction. Caesar understood that memory itself could be political. By displaying Marius's image, he was not merely honoring a dead relative. He was announcing that Sulla's victory had not permanently decided which Romans deserved to be remembered. Soon afterward, Caesar's wife Cornelia also died. She had remained beside him after he refused Sulla's command to divorce her. Caesar delivered a public funeral speech for her as well. Plutarch claimed this was unusual because such formal speeches were generally associated with older women rather than young wives. The gesture brought Caesar public sympathy, but also revealed a pattern that would define his career. Private grief became public theater. Family history became political argument. And every appearance before the Roman people became an opportunity to strengthen the bond between his name and the crowd. As quaestor, Caesar was assigned to further Spain. His duties were administrative and judicial rather than glorious. He traveled through provincial communities, heard legal cases, and served beneath the governor. At Gades, modern Cadiz, he entered the Temple of Hercules and saw a statue of Alexander the Great. According to Suetonius, Caesar sighed because Alexander had conquered so much while still young, whereas Caesar believed he had achieved almost nothing worthy of remembrance. The scene comes from a later ancient biography and may have been shaped to foreshadow his future greatness. Yet it reflects something consistent in Caesar's life. Ordinary success was never enough. He did not compare himself with other Roman officials. He compared himself with the greatest conqueror the Mediterranean world had ever known. Caesar returned to Rome before completing his provincial term, determined to pursue greater opportunities. He had no great command. He had won no major war. He remained far below the consuls and generals who controlled the republic. But he had learned how to combine ancestry, grief, public speaking, popular memory, and personal ambition. The next stage of his rise would require money. More money than Caesar possessed. He would borrow it, spend it, and use spectacles so magnificent that Rome would find it impossible to look away. Rome's highest offices were not won by talent alone. A candidate needed ancestry, allies, visibility, and money. Caesar possessed the first three. For the fourth, he relied on loans. In 65 BCE, he became curule aedile, responsible for public buildings, festivals, and games. He shared the office with Marcus Calpurnius Bibulus. But Caesar spent so lavishly that much of the credit seemed to belong to him alone. Temporary displays filled the Forum and Capitol. Public feasts, theatrical events, and hundreds of gladiators impressed the crowd. The spectacles were political advertising. Every citizen who attended was encouraged to remember Caesar's name. The cost drove him deeper into debt. Caesar was gambling that future offices and provincial commands would give him the influence and income needed to survive. During his aedileship, Caesar made another calculated gesture. Images and trophies of Gaius Marius were restored on the Capitol after years of suppression under Sulla. Marius had been Caesar's uncle by marriage and Sulla's great enemy. Some citizens welcomed the images. Others remembered civil war and reacted with alarm. Caesar was reviving a political tradition Sulla had tried to erase. 2 years later, Caesar competed for Pontifex Maximus, Rome's chief priest. The position was held for life and carried immense prestige. Caesar faced 2 older and more influential candidates. Ancient accounts say he borrowed and spent heavily to win. Suetonius preserves the story that Caesar told his mother on the morning of the vote that he would return as chief priest or not return at all. The exact words cannot be verified. The risk was real. Caesar won. At about 37, he had gained a lifetime place at the center of Roman public life. That same year, 63 BC, Rome uncovered conspiracy of Lucius Sergius Catilina. Catiline left the city to join an armed rebellion, while several associates were arrested in Rome. The Senate debated whether they should be executed immediately. Caesar, now praetor-elect, argued against death without trial. He proposed confiscating their property and imprisoning them in separate Italian towns. Cato the Younger demanded execution. The Senate followed Cato, and the prisoners were killed. Caesar's enemies later used his speech to suggest sympathy with Catiline. Ancient writers preserve suspicions, but no reliable proof shows that he participated in the conspiracy. The debate revealed how far Caesar had risen. He had bought popularity through spectacle. He had restored forbidden memories. He had defeated leading aristocrats for Rome's highest priesthood. And during a moment of panic, he had opposed the Senate's prevailing mood. In 62 BC, Caesar entered the praetorship. His debts remained enormous. His enemies were multiplying. Soon, a scandal inside his own house would threaten his marriage and political future. In December 62 BC, while Caesar was serving as praetor, one of Rome's most sacred ceremonies took place inside his official residence. The festival honored the Bona Dei, the good goddess. Only women were permitted to attend. Caesar's mother, Aurelia, supervised the rites, while his wife Pompey participated with other aristocratic women. During the ceremony, Publius Clodius Pulcher entered the house disguised as a woman. Ancient writers claim that Clodius intended to meet Pompey secretly, although whether an affair truly existed was never proven. A servant discovered that the disguised stranger was a man. The ceremony was stopped. Clodius escaped, but the scandal spread rapidly through Rome. Entering the women-only religious rites was treated not merely as adultery, but as sacrilege. Clodius was eventually prosecuted. Caesar was called to give evidence. He testified that he had no direct knowledge of wrongdoing. Yet before the trial was complete, he divorced Pompeia. When asked why he had separated from her despite refusing to accuse her, Caesar was later said to have answered that his wife must be above suspicion. The exact wording comes through later ancient authors, but the political meaning was clear. Caesar would not allow uncertainty inside his household to weaken his public position. Clodius was acquitted, probably with the help of bribery and political influence. The episode damaged reputations but did not destroy Caesar. He moved forward quickly. After completing his praetorship, Caesar received the governorship of further Spain in 61 BC. His creditors attempted to prevent him from leaving Rome. Years of elections, games, public displays, and political campaigns had placed him under crushing debt. Marcus Licinius Crassus intervened. The richest man in Rome guaranteed a substantial portion of Caesar's obligations, allowing him to depart for his province. Crassus did not act from generosity alone. He recognized Caesar's energy, popularity, and usefulness as a political ally. In Spain, Caesar finally received an independent military command. Ancient accounts of the campaigns are brief and sometimes shaped by later admiration, but they agree that he acted with speed. He recruited additional troops and campaigned in the northwest against Lusitanian and Calaetian communities. Some groups withdrew into the mountains. Others resisted Roman demands. Caesar pursued them toward the Atlantic coast, captured settlements, and gathered wealth through conquest. Suetonius later accused him of attacking communities that had offered no resistance, reminding us that Roman accounts of military glory often concealed the suffering of conquered populations. His soldiers acclaimed him as imperator, a battlefield honor that allowed him to request a triumph. Caesar returned to Italy in 60 BC with victories, money, and greater prestige. But Roman law placed him in a difficult position. A commander awaiting a triumph had to remain outside the sacred boundary of Rome. A candidate for the consulship normally had to enter the city and present himself in person. Caesar asked the Senate to permit him to stand for election while remaining outside. Cato and other opponents resisted the request. They understood that Caesar wanted both military glory and political advancement. Forced to choose, Caesar abandoned the triumph. He crossed into Rome as a private citizen and declared himself a candidate for consul. The decision revealed his priorities. A triumph would have celebrated what he had already accomplished. The consulship could give him power over what came next. To win it, Caesar would need allies strong enough to overcome the Senate's resistance. One was the immensely wealthy Crassus. The other was Rome's most celebrated living general, Pompey the Great. Together, the three men were about to create an alliance that would change the balance of the Republic. Caesar entered Rome in 60 BC needing more than victory in an election. He needed protection. His debts were enormous, and many senators considered him reckless, dangerous, or both. Pompey the Great had returned from his eastern campaigns with unmatched military prestige. Yet the Senate delayed approving his settlements and resisted granting land to his veterans. Crassus possessed extraordinary wealth but remained a political rival of Pompey and wanted favorable treatment for tax contractors operating in Asia. Caesar recognized that each man possessed what the others lacked. The agreement they formed was private rather than constitutional. Later historians called it the First Triumvirate. It was not an official board created by Roman law. It was a political alliance in which Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus promised to support one another and prevent the Senate from blocking their interests. Caesar's most important achievement was bringing Pompey and Crassus together despite their long hostility. Pompey contributed military fame and loyal veterans. Crassus contributed money and influence. Caesar contributed popular support, political skill, and the consulship he hoped to win. The alliance was strengthened through marriage. Caesar gave his daughter Julia in marriage to Pompey, despite the considerable difference in their ages. Ancient writers often treated the marriage as a political arrangement, but later accounts suggest genuine affection developed between them. The union made Pompey not merely Caesar's ally, but his son-in-law. Caesar was elected consul for 59 BC alongside Marcus Calpurnius Bibulus. Bibulus belonged to the conservative political opposition and intended to restrain him. Caesar initially presented an agrarian proposal that would distribute public land and land purchased from willing sellers. The measure would benefit poor citizens and provide settlements for Pompey's veterans. Caesar claimed to invite debate and offered to revise the proposal. His opponents resisted it largely because passing the law would strengthen Caesar and Pompey. When the Senate blocked him, Caesar took the proposal directly to the popular assembly. Bibulus attempted to stop the vote by announcing unfavorable religious signs. Violence and intimidation followed in the forum. Bibulus was driven away, and the law passed with public support from Pompey and Crassus. Bibulus then withdrew from active public life for much of the year, issuing declarations from his house that Caesar's actions were invalid. Romans joked that the year was not the consulship of Caesar and Bibulus, but of Julius and Caesar. With his colleague politically neutralized, Caesar forced through the measures promised to his allies. Pompey's eastern arrangements were confirmed. Land was provided for his veterans. Financial relief benefited the tax contractors, supported by Crassus. Caesar also ordered records of senatorial and public proceedings to be published, presenting himself as an opponent of secret aristocratic government. These victories came at a cost. The consulship demonstrated that Caesar was willing to use crowds, political pressure, and allied force when traditional cooperation failed. His supporters saw determination. His enemies saw the beginnings of one-man rule. The Republic's institutions continued to exist, but personal alliances were increasingly stronger than constitutional custom. Caesar now required a military command that would protect him after leaving office. Through legislation supported by the tribune Publius Vatinius, he received Cisalpine Gaul and Illyricum for 5 years. The Senate later added Transalpine Gaul. He was given several legions and authority over territories extending from northern Italy toward the frontiers beyond the Alps. Caesar left Rome with political enemies behind him and an army ahead. He had entered the consulship as a deeply indebted aristocrat dependent on 2 stronger men. He departed with provinces, legions, and 5 years in which to create a military reputation of his own. Beyond the Alps lay divided peoples whom the Romans collectively called Gauls. Caesar would claim that events forced him into their wars. But once the campaigns began, he would not stop at defending a province. He would conquer almost all of Gaul, and the soldiers who accomplished it would learn to follow their commander more faithfully than they followed the Republic. When Caesar entered his provinces in 58 BCE, he possessed several legions and broad military authority. What he did not yet possess was the fame of Pompey. Gaul would change that. The region was not a single united nation. It contained many communities with different rulers, alliances, languages, and rivalries. Some had long-standing relations with Rome. Others feared Roman expansion. Caesar would repeatedly use these divisions, supporting one group against another, and then demanding loyalty from both. The first crisis involved the Helvetii. They had decided to leave their homeland in the region of modern Switzerland and migrate westward. Caesar refused to let them cross Roman territory along the Rhone. When they took another route and entered lands belonging to Roman allies, he pursued them. After weeks of marching and shortages, the 2 forces fought near Bibracte. The Romans prevailed, and Caesar ordered the surviving Helvetii to return home. He presented the campaign as a defense of Rome's province and its allies. It also carried his army far beyond the territory he had originally been appointed to govern. Caesar then turned against Ariovistus, a Germanic king who had crossed the Rhine and established power inside Gaul. Some Gallic leaders had previously invited Ariovistus into their conflicts. Now they feared his growing strength and appealed to Caesar. Negotiations failed. Caesar advanced rapidly, overcame fear within his own army, and defeated Ariovistus near the Rhine. The surviving Germanic forces fled eastward across the river. 2 major enemies had been defeated in one campaigning season. But Caesar did not withdraw. He stationed his legions in Gaul for the winter. The following year, the Belgic peoples of northern Gaul formed a coalition. According to Caesar, they feared that once the rest of Gaul was subdued, the Roman army would move against them. Their fear was justified. Caesar marched north before their forces could remain united. The most dangerous battle came against the Nervii near the river Sabus. The Nervii attacked while Roman soldiers were constructing camp. The assault was so sudden that units had little time to form their lines. Caesar later described taking a shield and moving into the fighting as the Roman position approached collapse. Discipline, reinforcements, and the experience of the legions eventually reversed the battle. The Nervii suffered devastating losses. although the numerical claims preserved in Caesar's account should be treated cautiously. His commentaries were both a military record and a presentation of his achievements to Roman readers. In 56 BCE, resistance shifted toward the Atlantic coast. The Veneti were experienced sailors whose fortified settlements stood on coastal positions protected by tides. Their heavy ships were better suited to Atlantic waters than Roman vessels. Caesar ordered a fleet constructed and placed it under Decimus Brutus. Roman crews developed a method of cutting the ropes supporting the Veneti ship's sails. Once their vessels lost movement, Roman soldiers could board them. After the naval defeat, Caesar ordered the execution of the Veneti leaders and sold much of the population into slavery. The punishment was intended to discourage further resistance. Caesar's campaigns continued beyond Gaul. In 55 BCE, he constructed a bridge across the Rhine, marched briefly into Germanic territory, and then destroyed the bridge after returning. Later that year, he crossed the English Channel in the first Roman military expedition to Britain. Storms damaged his fleet, and the expedition achieved little permanent control. He returned with a larger force in 54 BCE. Caesar crossed the Thames, fought forces associated with the British leader Cassivellaunus, demanded hostages and tribute, and then returned to the continent. Britain had not been conquered, but the expeditions expanded his reputation and demonstrated that his armies could move beyond the known boundaries of Roman power. Every campaign brought Caesar wealth, captives, and military honors. More importantly, it created an army shaped by years of shared danger. His soldiers had crossed mountains, rivers, forests, and seas under his command. They received rewards from him. They survived because of decisions attributed to him. Their loyalty was increasingly personal. Rome had sent Caesar north as a provincial governor. Gaul was turning him into a conqueror capable of challenging Rome itself. The conquest of Gaul was not yet secure. In the winter of 54 BCE, Caesar divided his legions among several territories because poor harvests made it difficult to supply the army from one location. The decision exposed isolated Roman camps to attack. Among the Eburones, the leader Ambiorix approached the camp commanded by Quintus Titurius Sabinus and Lucius Aurunculius Cotta. He claimed that a larger Gallic uprising was beginning and warned that German forces would soon cross the Rhine. He offered the Romans safe passage. Cotta distrusted him. Sabinus believed remaining inside the camp was more dangerous. The Roman column departed. In a narrow valley, the Eburones attacked from the surrounding ground. Roman discipline could not fully overcome the disadvantage. Sabinus attempted to negotiate and was killed. Cotta died fighting. Almost the entire force, 1 legion and 5 additional cohorts, was destroyed. It was Caesar's worst loss in Gaul. The victory encouraged other communities to rebel. Another Roman camp, commanded by Quintus Cicero, was surrounded and attacked. Caesar marched rapidly to relieve it before the defenders were overwhelmed. He then spent much of 53 BCE punishing the communities connected to the uprising. The territory of the Eburones was devastated. Villages were burned. Food supplies were seized. Neighboring peoples were invited to plunder the region. Ambiorix repeatedly escaped Roman pursuit, disappearing into forests and marshes while Caesar's cavalry searched for him. Caesar never captured him. The brutality of these campaigns did not end Gallic resistance. It helped create the conditions for a larger revolt. In early 52 BCE, while Caesar was south of the Alps, rebellion spread through central Gaul. Among the Arverni, a young aristocrat named Vercingetorix gathered supporters and was proclaimed leader. He understood that divided resistance had allowed Caesar to defeat one people at a time. His answer was unity. Vercingetorix imposed discipline, demanded troops and hostages, and promoted a scorched-earth strategy. Towns and food supplies were destroyed, so the Roman army could not live from the land. At Avaricum, however, The inhabitants persuaded him to spare the city. Caesar surrounded it. After a difficult siege, the Romans broke through the fences. Caesar claimed that almost the entire population was killed, though his figures and descriptions serve his own political narrative and must be read cautiously. Vercingetorix continued the war. At Gergovia, Caesar attempted to attack a strongly defended hilltop position. Confusion spread among the Roman units. Orders were misunderstood or ignored, and the assault failed. Hundreds of Roman soldiers were lost. It was a rare, clear defeat for Caesar. The setback encouraged even the Aedui, longtime Roman allies, to join the rebellion. At a council at Bibracte, the Gallic coalition confirmed Vercingetorix as supreme commander. Caesar's position appeared dangerous. His supply routes were threatened. Much of Gaul had turned against him. Yet, after defeating Gallic cavalry in another engagement, he forced Vercingetorix to withdraw into the fortified settlement of Alesia. Caesar chose not to storm the hill. He surrounded it. Roman soldiers constructed an inner line of fortifications facing Alesia and another outer line facing the countryside. Ditches, ramparts, towers, sharpened obstacles, and fortified camps formed a vast double barrier. Caesar was besieging Vercingetorix. At the same time, he was preparing to be besieged by the relief army gathering outside. When the Gallic reinforcements arrived, the Romans were trapped between two forces. Attacks came from inside and outside the defenses. At the most dangerous moment, Caesar personally moved toward the threatened section of the line, sending reserves into the struggle. The final Gallic attack failed. The relief army dispersed. Inside Alesia, food was exhausted and escape had become impossible. Vercingetorix surrendered. Later artistic accounts transformed the moment into a grand ceremonial scene, but the precise details remain uncertain. What mattered was the result. The greatest united uprising in Gaul had been defeated. Caesar spent the following campaign suppressing the remaining resistance. By 50 BCE, organized opposition had largely collapsed. Gaul had brought him immense wealth, political fame, and an army hardened by nearly a decade of war. But in Rome, the alliance that once protected him was breaking apart. Crassus was dead. Caesar's daughter Julia was dead. And Pompey was moving closer to Caesar's enemies in the Senate. The conquest of Gaul was ending. The struggle for Rome was about to begin. The alliance that had carried Caesar, the power was gone. His daughter Julia, whose marriage had connected him to Pompey, died in 54 BCE. The following year, Crassus was killed during his disastrous campaign against Parthia. Without them, there was little left to restrain the rivalry between Rome's two greatest commanders. Pompey moved closer to Caesar's senatorial enemies. In 52 BCE, during political violence in Rome, he was appointed sole consul. He presented himself as a defender of order, while Caesar remained beyond the Alps with experienced legions and an approaching end of his provincial command. Caesar wanted to stand for another consulship without first surrendering his army, without office or military authority. He feared prosecution for actions committed during his earlier consulship. His opponents demanded that he dismiss his troops and return to Rome as a private citizen. Caesar proposed that both he and Pompey give up their commands. The compromise failed. In January 49 BCE, the Senate ordered Caesar to surrender his authority. The tribunes Mark Antony and Quintus Cassius, who had opposed the decision, fled Rome and joined him. Caesar now claimed that he was defending the rights of the tribunes and protecting himself from an illegal political attack. Near the small river Rubicon, the boundary separating his province from Italy, Caesar made the decision that transformed a constitutional crisis into civil war. He crossed with the 13th Legion. Ancient writers later associated the moment with the words, "Let the die be cast." The exact scene may have been dramatized, but the act itself was unmistakable. A Roman commander had entered Italy with an army without authorization from the Senate. Caesar advanced with extraordinary speed. Many Italian towns opened their gates. Pompey and most of the leading senators withdrew southward rather than risk being trapped in Rome. They crossed the Adriatic and gathered forces in Greece. Caesar entered the capital, secured the treasury, and then turned west toward Pompey's armies in Spain. He reportedly described the strategy as going first against an army without a commander before facing a commander without an army. The Spanish forces surrendered after Caesar outmaneuvered them near Alerta. Only then did he pursue Pompey across the Adriatic. The campaign in Greece almost ended in Caesar's defeat. Near Dyrrhachium, Pompey broke through Caesar's defensive lines and forced him to retreat. Caesar later admitted the seriousness of the setback, although his surviving account of the war was written to justify his own decisions and portray his enemies as unwilling to compromise. Pompey believed Caesar was weakening. His more aggressive allies demanded a decisive battle. In August 48 BCE, the armies met near Pharsalus in Thessaly. Pompey possessed a larger cavalry force and planned to use it to attack Caesar's exposed flank. Caesar anticipated the maneuver and placed a concealed reserve behind his cavalry. When Pompey's horsemen drove Caesar's riders back, the reserve advanced. The attack disrupted Pompey's plan. Caesar's veterans pressed forward, and the senatorial army collapsed. Pompey fled the battlefield, while Caesar pardoned several captured opponents, including men who would later return to political resistance. Pompey escaped to Egypt, expecting protection from the dynasty he had once supported. Instead, advisors to young King Ptolemy XIII decided that killing him would please Caesar. Pompey was murdered as he approached the shore, and his severed head was presented to his rival. Ancient accounts describe Caesar reacting with grief or disgust. Whether his emotion was entirely sincere cannot be known. Pompey had once been his ally and son-in-law. He had also been the last man capable of matching Caesar's prestige. Caesar had followed an enemy into Egypt. He now found a kingdom divided between Ptolemy and his sister Cleopatra. Rather than leave, Caesar declared that Rome would settle their dispute. Cleopatra secretly gained access to him, though the famous story that she arrived rolled inside a carpet is probably a later embellishment. Caesar supported her claim. The decision trapped a small force inside Alexandria and drew him into another war, after months of dangerous fighting and the arrival of reinforcements. Ptolemy's army was defeated, and the young king drowned while attempting to escape. Cleopatra was restored to the throne alongside another younger brother. Her political and personal relationship with Caesar would soon become famous throughout the Mediterranean. Pompey was dead. Rome's principal army had been defeated. But the civil war was not over. Caesar's enemies were gathering again in Africa. And when he finally returned to Rome, victory would bring him something more dangerous than war: power without an equal. Pompey was dead, but Caesar's enemies continued the war. In 46 BCE, he crossed into North Africa, where the surviving senatorial forces had joined King Juba of Numidia. Caesar defeated them at Thapsus. Cato the Younger, unwilling to accept Caesar's pardon, took his own life at Utica and became a symbol of resistance to dictatorship. The following year, Caesar fought his final major battle near Munda in Spain against Pompey's sons. The struggle was fierce, but Caesar's veterans eventually broke the opposing line. By 45 BCE, no army remained capable of challenging him for control of the Roman world. Caesar returned to Rome not as an ordinary magistrate, but as a ruler without an equal. He celebrated triumphs for victories in Gaul, Egypt, Africa, and Spain. Captives and treasure passed through the streets. Vercingetorix, held for years after his surrender at Alesia, was executed during the Gallic triumph. Caesar pardoned many former enemies and allowed some to return to political life. Yet mercy also demonstrated his superiority. Men who once regarded themselves as defenders of the Republic now held their lives and careers through Caesar's decision. He began an ambitious program of reform. The calendar had drifted badly out of alignment with the seasons, so Caesar introduced the Julian calendar, using a solar system developed with expert assistance. He established colonies for veterans and poorer citizens, reformed local administration, reduced the number receiving subsidized grain, and expanded the Senate. Some measures addressed genuine problems. Others filled institutions with men dependent upon Caesar. The Senate remained in existence, but its independence was shrinking. Honors accumulated around him. He held repeated consulships and dictatorships. His portrait appeared on Roman coins during his lifetime. Statues were placed beside those of kings and gods. A month was renamed in his honor. Early in 44 BCE, he received the title Dictator Perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity. Romans had expelled their last king centuries earlier. The fear of monarchy remained deeply rooted in their political identity. Caesar rejected the title of king, but many senators believed the difference between a king and a permanent dictator was becoming meaningless. During the festival of the Lupercalia, Mark Antony publicly offered Caesar a diadem. Caesar refused it as the crowd watched. Whether the scene was planned as a test of public opinion remains uncertain. To suspicious senators, even the performance of refusing a crown suggested that kingship had become imaginable. Caesar was also preparing a major eastern campaign against Parthia. Departure would place him once again at the head of a loyal army. His enemies feared that once he left Italy, removing him might become impossible. The conspiracy formed around Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus. Cassius was an experienced soldier and a bitter political opponent. Brutus carried a name associated with the legendary expulsion of Rome's kings. He had fought for Pompey, received Caesar's pardon, and later accepted important offices from him. The conspirators called themselves liberators. Their motives were not identical. Some genuinely feared monarchy. Some defended senatorial authority. Some carried personal grievances. They agreed on only one essential point. Caesar had to die. A meeting of the Senate was scheduled for March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March, inside a hall attached to Pompey's theater. Ancient writers later described warnings, omens, a troubled dream experienced by Caesar's wife Calpurnia, and a soothsayer who cautioned him about the day. These stories may preserve real memories, but they were written after the event and shaped by the dramatic knowledge of what followed. Caesar nearly remained at home. Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus, one of the conspirators and a man Caesar trusted, persuaded him to attend. When Caesar entered the meeting hall, the senators rose. Tullius Cimber approached with a petition asking for the return of his exiled brother. Others crowded around, pretending to support the request. Cimber seized Caesar's toga. Publius Servilius Casca struck the first blow. Then the conspirators attacked together. Caesar tried to resist, but he was surrounded. Ancient tradition counted 23 wounds. Suetonius reported that a physician later judged only one to have been fatal. The famous words, "Ititu, brute," come from later literary tradition and are not securely recorded as Caesar's final statement. Plutarch's account has him cease resisting when he recognized Brutus among the attackers. Caesar fell beneath the statue of Pompey. The image was irresistible to later writers. The conqueror who had defeated Pompey now lay dead at the feet of his former rival. The assassins believed that killing the dictator would restore the republic. They had prepared for murder. They had not prepared adequately for the morning after. Caesar remained popular among soldiers, veterans, and many ordinary citizens. Mark Antony escaped the assassination, and soon began rebuilding support. Caesars will name his 18-year-old grandnephew Gaius Octavius as his principal heir and adopted son. The young heir took the name Gaius Julius Caesar. History would remember him as Augustus. More civil wars followed. Brutus and Cassius were defeated. Antony and Octavian eventually turned against one another. Octavian emerged as Rome's sole ruler and created a monarchy that preserved the language and offices of the Republic while removing meaningful competition for supreme power. Julius Caesar did not destroy the Roman Republic alone. Its institutions had already been damaged by inequality, political violence, military commands, Sulla's dictatorship, and decades of civil conflict. But Caesar crossed boundaries that the Republic could not survive unchanged. He marched an army into Italy, defeated his Roman rivals, concentrated offices in his own hands, and made permanent personal authority appear possible. His killers ended his life. They did not save the Republic. On the Ides of March, they struck down the man who had become too powerful for Rome's old political order. In doing so, they opened the final path toward empire,